Hello. I spoke last time about the sponsorship of big sporting events and big sports teams, the likes of Barcelona and Manchester United football clubs, the big events like the World Cup football and the Olympics. I concluded that the benefits for this type of sponsorship are difficult to quantify in terms of direct revenue, but clearly the companies involved must see some benefit despite the huge sums of money they spend to have their name associated with a certain team or event. Today I'd like to extend this topic to smaller, more marginal sports. I'm going to look specifically at cycling. The only reason for that is because I love it. I ride my bike most days and I watch cycling on TV whenever I can, so it's easier to talk about something you enjoy. Firstly, I'll look at some of the sponsors of the biggest cycling teams, and then some of the costs involved, and finally consider whether the cost provides a decent ROI, or return on investment, for those sponsors. So, professional cyclists have a lucrative, if fairly short, career. The very best ones, those that win the biggest races like the Tour de France and Giro d'Italia, earn huge amounts of money. They're paid to ride their bikes very far and very fast by their teams, who are sponsored by companies, or in one particular case, by a country. I watch quite a lot of cycling, but I had no idea what many of these sponsoring companies do until I researched them. I'll just list a few of them, and you can decide if you recognise the company name or what the company does. So AG2R, La Mondiale, BMC Racing Team, Dimension Data, Ethics Quickstep, Giant Alpecin, and Movistar. That's 6 of the largest 20 or so cycling teams which compete in all of the big cycling races. Now, when I first started to watch cycling on TV and follow the sport, I knew 3 of the companies I've just mentioned. 2 of them manufacture their own bikes, and one, Alpecin, makes shampoo to wash your hair. This shampoo has caffeine in it, which may help to stop you from going bald if you're a man, but that's not scientifically proven. The others I had to research, so here we go. AG2R Mondiale is a French insurance and savings company, so dealing with financial products. Dimension Data is a cloud computing and IT outsourcing company. Ethics is a brand of sports nutrition products owned by the Omega Pharma, a pharmaceutical company. Quickstep makes laminated flooring, the kind you might see in your kitchen or your bathroom. Movistar is a Spanish mobile telecommunications operator. The 2 bike manufacturers are Giant and BMC. I mentioned the team which is sponsored by a country. That is Astana, which, if you didn't know, is the capital of Kazakhstan, the ex-Soviet Republic. Astana is the capital city. The country is hoping to promote itself through cycle sponsorship. So how much do these companies spend on these cycle racing teams? The Sky team, a UK cycling team, spends about £24 million a year. And that is the highest spending of the professional teams. The other teams spend usually about 14 to 16 million pounds per year to finance the running of their cycling teams. Exactly like the football and events I spoke about last time, these are huge sums of money. So let's then think about what the sponsors receive from their sponsorship deals, their ROI, or return on investment. Well, the biggest races are shown on TV, so there is a potential worldwide audience looking at the sponsors' names and their logos for fairly long periods of time. And they have race commentators saying the sponsors' names quite often. Note that we do not get this at football matches. You would not hear a football commentator saying Manchester City sponsored by Etihad, or indeed Etihad Manchester City. But they do in cycling, so you hear things like Sky's Chris Froome, or Chris Froome for Team Sky. However, and this is a fairly huge however, not so many people watch cycling on TV. Certainly nowhere near the numbers that watch football on TV. So let's look at some evidence for that. The BBC estimated that 8.8 million people watched the Tour de France on TV for at least 15 minutes in 2012. 6.5 million watched it in 2013. Now that's less than 10% of the UK population, and it's likely that of those who watched at least 15 minutes, not many watched it for too much longer than 15 minutes. And I think that's because unless you're a fan, it just isn't very interesting, unless you understand the various tactics that are going on in what is a 4.5 or 5 hour race. Therefore, I think the exposure that these team sponsors receive in the media is probably not as much as they would hope for. Interestingly, the Tour de France organisers claim that nearly half of the world's population will at some point watch the Tour de France, which is a 3-week bike race. Maybe they will see a minute or two on the evening news about the winner, but based on the UK viewing figures, that half of the world's population seems unlikely, very unlikely to me. In addition to the very low-level numbers of people watching cycle racing, I'd also question whether the people who do watch it have any interest in the products or services that these sponsors offer. Living in the UK, I'm not interested in AG2R Mondial's financial services because they are based in France. I can't use Movistar's telecoms products because they are in Spain. I might, I suppose, be interested in buying some Quick Step floor for my kitchen, but I certainly wouldn't buy it just because they sponsor a cycling team. I may buy some Alpecin shampoo when my hair starts to fall out more quickly than it is already. Having said that, I should of course look at some expert opinion on this matter. So I read a report by the Cycling News magazine in 2013 about the value of sponsorship to the sport. Information on this matter is quite sparse, there's not much of it. And this report may be at least slightly biased because the magazine is pro-cycling. If professional cycling diminished or stopped, they'd have nothing to write about. However, the report does contain some figures which I will share with you. The report claims that the average cycling team generates $88.4 million worth of media exposure every year through cycling, most of which is through the TV coverage. Thus, sponsoring a cycling team covers them for the cost of $88.4 million worth of media coverage through other marketing avenues, like adverts. The report estimates that the return on investment is $5 for every $1 spent, and that's actually very good on the face of it. But as another writer pointed out, the ROI should not just be measured in terms of media coverage. So here are 4 other ROIs that companies may consider. Firstly, how well the sponsorship fits with the brand story the company is trying to sell. Secondly, potential business and cross promotions with other sponsors. Thirdly, the impact on consumers' perceptions and purchasing behaviour. And finally, impact on employee retention and pride about the company they work for. However, despite those 4 reasons, I would ask the question of whether this media exposure or coverage is targeted to the appropriate worldwide audience. I will accept it for teams sponsored by a bike manufacturer. I'd love to buy myself a bike made by BMC because they are awesome looking, but I don't accept it for a Spanish-based telecoms company or a French-based financial services company. If those companies wanted to replace their sponsorship of cycling, which costs, as I said, up to £20 million a year, with more usual advertising and marketing, would they market and advertise their products in countries where their products cannot be bought? I don't think they would. So to conclude then, I'm not convinced that the return on investment for sponsoring niche and smaller, less popular sports is as good as the report I mentioned claims. However, I am glad that these companies do sponsor the teams, as without them there would be no cycling, and I think they improve the quality of the sports that they sponsor. Alright, thank you very much.